What's going on, everybody? I'm trying to figure out some audio issues going on, so give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Go ahead and tell me in chat if you can hear me or not, because I'm not sure that my audio is working. So drop a message in chat if you can hear me, because I think my audio might be kind of messed up. Got a couple of viewers, so let me know if you're there and in chat. Trying to load on a couple of other devices just to see whether it's actually coming through and playing live or not. Let's see. Loud and clear. All right, cool. Basic John, good to see you in chat. First time chatter, hello, welcome. So I'm Ian Douglas, I'm the author of the website techinterview.guide, and I basically help people out with career prep and interview prep and getting ready for jobs in the tech industry. Love to kind of help with, just helpful advice. We're going to do a resume review tonight that somebody submitted today, and we're going to go through that, and then probably just some Q&A, some carryover from last week. And then, so yeah, in the meantime, if you've got questions, if you've got topics and things like that you want to talk about, please always, you are welcome to drop those in chat, and I will answer those kind of as we go as well. So I'm going to just load up one other thing over here, and then we'll get started. So I'm trying to load this on a couple of other devices, and some of them seem to be streaming okay, and some of them are locking up. So I don't know if it's just those devices or if there's something else going on, but less concerned about those right now. I do want to check the chat bot. Is it the chat bot? Cool, just want to make sure things like this still work. Yeah, okay. So my Stream Deck is working. Countdown. Nope. Alerts. Bigger. Okay, those are fine. Overlays, stats. All right, here we go. I think we're in the right spot. I think we're gradually getting there. Cool. So, Basic John, good to see you in chat. Cool. Let's see. No, there's something else. There it is. Timer. Cool. I just want to double check a couple of things where it's going to like send an automated message to the stream like every couple of minutes saying like, hey, if you got questions, go ahead and drop it in there. Otherwise, it's only going to do it like once an hour kind of thing. All right, so that'll probably pop up in chat from time to time as we go. But yeah, let's dive in. Let's get to it. So this week's going to be ridiculously busy. Carmen, what's up? Alabaster testing call. Cracks me up now that you've explained to me what that's all about. But yeah, hope you're doing well. Hope your weekend's been good. I signed up for a tech conference, like just to attend a tech conference. And I thought it was going to be great. It's about developer relations. And I'm like, this sounds great. DevRelCon, it's going to be great. So I signed up and they're like, it's free, but you can pay if you want to, and the whole bit. And I'm like, all right, I'll pay like $50, whatever. Free content, gotta support the things that you enjoy and the things that you love. I signed up for the tech conference. They're like, oh yeah, and we're in the UK. It's going to start at like 4 a.m. your time. I'm like, oh no, what did I do? So I'm going to go to bed early tonight so I can get up super early and attend a tech conference that's hosted out of the UK tomorrow morning for the next couple of days. And RubyConf is in the Denver area, so I'm going to try really, really hard to get out over the next couple of evenings and see folks. Rumor has it Jonan's in town. And I would love to get together with Jonan if Jonan's in the Denver area, or if any of you are in the Denver area and you're coming for RubyConf, let me know. Let's go grab a coffee or grab a lunch or something like that. I've got some flexibility with the work schedule and stuff like that. So, Hitakuri, good to see you again. We spent a lot of time on the chat last night watching me live code. So difficult not to chuck this current iteration of the project and start over. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it was fun. So for those that didn't catch it on the stream, I was live coding just a little web interface that I can use then to plug in all of the Q&A session stuff. Got all the CRUD endpoints done last night while I was waiting for an enormous 3D print to finish, and the print ended up not working out. I took it off the build plate and it just snapped in half. It didn't like solidify together. So that was super disappointing. It was like 35 hours of print time and a ton of filament, and went in the trash. So that was a little heartbreaking, but it happens with 3D printing. It's kind of the nature of it. But I got my palette 3 right here working great. So it's making like little multicolor keychains. Got that all tuned in and good to go there. So that's fun. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let's dive in. So as I mentioned, I got a resume to review. We're going to go through that today. Just kind of give my thoughts and perspectives on the resume, and then we'll go through some more Q&A stuff. But as always, if you got questions in the meantime, please drop them in chat. Let me know you're there. Let me know how your weekend was. What's going on for your week? Are you job hunting? Do you have questions about the process? Anything along those lines, please feel free to drop that in chat kind of as we go. My youngest is playing The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow from Annie on the piano upstairs. Thankfully, my microphone like filters all that stuff out. I use the Crisp plugin, and so unfortunately you can't hear it, but fortunately you can't hear it. He's actually really good on the piano, like surprisingly good. He's way better than I've ever been on the piano. Stephen Hungry, good to see you in chat. First time chat. Preparing for your Google onsite in 3 weeks. Awesome. Good for you. And congrats on that. That one's going to be tough. If you've got ideas or questions about leak code and stuff, I've got a whole bunch of videos on this YouTube channel I just put in chat. Go search for the word leak code, and I've actually got some stuff on there on how to shortcut that leak code grind, where you're just studying the patterns a little bit more instead of just grinding on the questions themselves. So I think once you have a good understanding of those patterns, it can really help with those kinds of interviews. But you can also like throw that advice out the window if you've been studying and cranking on this stuff and you've already been preparing. Just wanted to add my 2 cents on that. But good luck with that Google onsite. Those interviews are no joke. They are hard for sure. I remember my Google interview back in the day, and it was rough. I was chatting with someone, I think last night while I was doing the live coding, that I was going through their interview process, and I was doing their interviews and doing their tech challenges and whatever. And it was all going great until they wanted to confirm which office I wanted to work out of, and I didn't want to work out of the office they wanted me to work out of. So neither of us were going to budge. What's that saying? When an immovable object meets something, like neither one's going to move. Anyway, that was me and Google. They wanted me to work out of an office in Venice Beach, California, and we had just moved from there, and I wasn't about to do a 90-minute commute back to that office. And so we agreed to part ways. And of course, as soon as I move out to Colorado, they're like, well, we have offices out here in Colorado, right? You going to reapply? And by then I didn't want to work for Google anymore. So trying to focus on dynamic programming. Yeah, that's a tricky range of problems to work through because there's such a variety in how to do dynamic programming. The thing that I kind of coach people with DP problems is DP is really about, is there a repeatable subproblem to do? And if there is, like if you can find like, oh, I just need to repeat this whole thing with a different input, then it's probably going to be a dynamic programming problem. But you can get really tripped up on what you need to track and how you cache what you've already looked at. And a lot of people kind of misconstrue dynamic programming to be sort of this 2-dimensional matrix that you have to put in memory, where dynamic programming is really about just the nature of having a repeatable subproblem. And once you detect that, then, at the core of it, like depth first search, breadth first search, those are technically dynamic programming problems because you're repeating the problem again and again, just with different inputs. So any kind of recursive sort of path is technically DP. But a lot of people think about dynamic programming as being this 2-dimensional matrix and the caching side of it. And I think the caching is supplemental to the actual like heart of the problem itself. So good luck with that. DP is definitely interesting. One caution that I would give is like, don't just go heads down on dynamic programming and do nothing else for the next like 2 or 3 weeks. Keep practicing other kinds of problems, because you don't want to get to the interview and find out they're giving you a problem that's not dynamic programming. You're like, oh shoot, I haven't studied that in like a month. You don't want to do that. So figure out some kind of rotation. One of my YouTube videos, I talk about like how to build up that rotation where you're doing different problem every day and you're also repeating the problems occasionally that you want to like keep fresh in your brain. So you can go check that out on YouTube. That one is called How to Reduce the Leak Code Grind or something to that effect. But yeah. All right, let's see. I'm going to do one more little housekeeping thing here on this side, then we'll jump into that resume review. How's everybody else doing? Got a handful of folks in chat now. This is awesome. Love having folks to chat with. Not that I'm not happy to just talk to myself, because sometimes I need expert opinion, but no, just kidding. Yeah, it's always good to have folks in chat. How are your weekends been? Carmen, how's your weekend been? What have you been up to since that conference? So Carmen was at a conference and you were doing like some JavaScript cybersecurity stuff. I'm kind of curious how that talk went, what you got out of it. Let's see. Restart. Okay, so I got to restart a device down here. I use a Microsoft tablet Surface thing over here just to make sure that everything's working properly on the stream, and it was having issues. So I'm just going to reboot that real quick. All right, well, I'm going to switch my view over here, and we're going to go over to this one where hopefully I can do some presenting. My presentation window seems to have disappeared, but let's see if this is going to work. I want Chrome. Hey, look at that. Cool, so this is an anonymized resume that someone submitted, and we're basically going to talk through this and work through this. So all their contact information is anonymized. Their real name is not Steve Stevenson. But we're going to go through, and I haven't looked at the resume yet. So this is just my blind opinion, not blind, but like unbiased opinion, because I haven't looked through any of this yet to really know what it is you've done on your resume. But I'm going to give you kind of my unfiltered thoughts kind of as we go. And what I usually do on these resumes is start by saying opinions are like armpits. Everybody's got a couple. Some of them stink. You don't have to just take my advice. This is just what I look for as a hiring manager and the biases that I have as a hiring manager. And so these are just kind of my own thoughts and opinions. Now, when you build a resume and you submit that for a job, you've got to get it through the applicant tracking system, then you've got to get it through HR, and then you've got to get it to the hiring manager. And there's no one way to write a resume that's going to please all of those. And so you just kind of have to figure out how to do your best and how to kind of lay things out the best for what's going to work for you. So feel free to take the advice I give with a large grain of salt. You absolutely don't have to do it the way that I described. But I think the more advice that you get from other people, the easier it is then to kind of form your own opinion on how you want to do it. So definitely get lots of opinions on your resume. Get lots of people to give you feedback on your resume, and then try to find some middle ground of like, okay, I'm going to take all these bits of advice and this is how I'm going to do it. At first glance, I kind of like the layout. There's a little tiny bit of an imbalance here between where the edge of this text starting and the edge of this text starting, but this text does line up with these bullet points. So vertically, there's some stuff going on, but then you kind of change up the two-column layout down here at the bottom with these two columns, which is a little interesting. Now, the other thing that I just noticed, as I'm highlighting all this text, watch what happens. As I try to highlight down into here, that highlight kind of shifts and changes. And when I go over to here and I hit that training, now something up over here in your strengths area just highlighted. That tells me that the PDF file that got generated from this is probably a little janky. One thing I would highly recommend doing is highlight all the text on this and paste it into an editor to see what that PDF file is actually going to look like as text, because the applicant tracking system is basically just scraping the text out of here and trying to look at keywords and so on. And so the fact that as I go through and I kind of highlight things here, like I'm trying to highlight down to your technologies, but as soon as I highlight that word technologies, notice that your software engineer internship up here suddenly jumps to be highlighted. So that tells me that maybe the PDF file got a little out of whack. And so you may want to submit a doc format for this. We typically, at least I typically tell people, if you're sending it to a human, send them a PDF. But if you're sending it to an online application, send a Word document because they tend to not have this problem. Otherwise, if you come in here and you just highlight all of the text on here, like I'm starting to drag from your name down, And as soon as I'm dragging down into here, suddenly your name's not highlighted anymore. And I don't have an easy way of just dragging across the whole page to highlight all the text. If I hit Control A, I highlight all the text. And that's effectively what an applicant tracking system is going to do, is it's going to try to scrape all the text and then sort of categorize it, like, this is where I found all the strengths, this is where I found all the projects. But if you kind of start highlighting stuff through your projects, these actually highlight just fine until I get to Pizza Parlor. And then suddenly Pizza Parlor doesn't highlight well as a project anymore. So those would be things that maybe an applicant tracking system is going to trip up on. So it might be something to think about there. Carmen says, learned something about myself during the conference. I don't like conferences. Oh, Steven Stevens is a strong name. Yep, cool. All right, well, let's let me finish one more thing here. Here we go. You know, I don't think I'm going to be able to use the tablet tonight. It is janky. Not sure what's going on with it. We'll give this a shot. We'll see whether this is going to work. I just like to keep an eye, like have an extra like chat window up. That way, if I don't see it in the broadcast software, I can kind of see it peripherally in my vision, and then I know to kind of pay attention to what folks are saying. So we will get there. We will figure it out. I promise. So aside from that, I would say generally I like the layout. The thing that I would probably try to change is how you're changing the education columns down here. I might put the graphic design over here on the left so that it kind of looks like the leftmost column, and then keep your Epicodus Coding Bootcamp over here on the right side. Because the way that you've got it, you're completely flipping your layout, and people are going to look at that and go, huh, that's weird. And so the advice I typically give people when I'm looking at resumes, I'm looking for a reason to say no. And so as much as possible, you want me to say yes to your resume. And so try not to do weird things, I guess. Not that your layout is weird, but sometimes people are going to look at your resume and go, something's off. Can't describe it, can't say what, but something looks a little weird, so it's going to go in my maybe pile. And it could just be something like, oh, these bits of text right here don't line up. And so maybe they can't articulate why it looks odd or looks a little off to them. But they're going to look at it and go, no, something about this doesn't sit right. I'm just going to pass. So you do want to be careful about that. Now, again, that's just the human bias that gets introduced in the interview process, and there's very little we can do about that. But I think that we can try to do our best as far as layout and fonts and things like that. All right, so kind of coming back to the main theme of this, if you are new in the industry and you're trying to get that first role, I would take the summary off. I don't think that you need to have that on there. Appreciate the opportunity to be considered for this position. This is good text to put in a cover letter. Doesn't belong on a resume, in my opinion. Recently completed a coding boot camp. They're already going to see that, so you don't need to restate that. As well as an internship. Again, they're going to see that here. I'm intending to enter a field. So again, you don't want to sort of level yourself and say, yeah, I'm brand new at this. Look at me. I'm brand new. Hello, I'm brand new over here. You don't want to draw attention to that. Just say, I'm a software engineer. I'm a full stack developer, UX designer. This is who I am, and I'm looking for a job. You don't have to say I'm aspiring or I intend to get into this industry. You're in the industry. Welcome to the industry. So I think this whole summary could get taken out. Now, if you take that out and you move that whole experience level up, then maybe your education could fit, and you could have just the one column over here where education kind of falls under here. And then you might have room for additional project work. So handful of things here that we'll kind of examine as we go. Now, when I look at font sizes, the font size of the technology stack here seems smaller than this font size. And so you probably want a consistent font size across the whole page. So the first thing I would do is just highlight all the text, like literally highlight all of the text on the page and just make everything 10-point font. And if it doesn't fit, maybe do 9-point font, and then come back and change the headings to be, say, 10 or like a 12-point font, and then make your name like 18-point font. Your name should be the biggest thing on the page. And again, that could be another reason to kind of take the summary off of here. If your name is longer than actually Steve Stevenson, then it'll give you the opportunity to sort of wrap that past that column and have your title kind of underneath your name. So yeah, the first thing I would do is get rid of this and just move that whole experience block up. Now, as a hiring manager, when I look at a resume, the first thing I'm looking for, and again, this is just my own bias as a hiring manager, the first thing I'm looking for is your skills. I have a list of skills that I hope you have, and so the first thing I'm going to do when I look at your resume is try to find those skills. So I see that here under strengths, which means I'm already skipping a lot of your experience over here on this side because my eye is looking for strengths and I see technical skills and I'm going to hone in on this. And then my eyesight is going to kind of keep coming down here looking at all the projects. And then I'm going to see the education and kind of come over here and see the graphic design stuff. And guess what? I just missed out on all of this other work experience because my bias is to look for skills. How, like, do you have the skills that I want? Where have you practiced those skills? And they're right up, on top of each other here. And so my eye is naturally going to be drawn down this left column and not on the right column. The other thing to consider here is your right column has a lot of words, and our eyes as people that are screening resumes, we're going to take the path of least resistance, which means we're probably going to go down the thin column. And there are like white balance things that you can do as far as like contrast to like lead their eye over to the right side of the page. You could do like a light gray background in that left column, and then our eyesight then is going to drift over to the right side. But again, if I'm looking for skills and you've got that on that left column and that left column now has a contrast in it, again, you're now drawing my eyesight down the right column where I don't see a skills block. And now I've got to actually hunt for, do you have all the skills that I need? Or I'm like jumping across the page, and it makes it harder for me to find that information. And again, I'm only spending like 10 seconds scanning this thing. I'm not reading the whole page. I just need to know, do you have the skills? Where have you practiced it? Where did you learn it? Do I think I should call you? And like I said, I'm looking for a reason to say no, just to say like, no, I can't easily find it. So it's a maybe or it's a no. Like if a coworker brings it to me and says, hey, this Steve Stevenson person, like we definitely need to get them on the phone, I'm going to trust their instinct and I'm going to probably call just from that alone. But if you're blind applying to a job and I see a resume like this and I've got to like hunt for this information, I'm probably going to pass on the resume. Again, just my own bias. Take that as you want. From an experience point of view, 2021, that's great. I would probably throw some months on here. Like, did you start a month ago? Did you start in January? Because that makes a big difference for how long you spent here. Now, you do tell me 5 weeks extended to 12, but you don't tell me whether it's over, and you don't tell me if it is over, when it ended. So was it a 12-week internship that went January to March, and you've been unemployed between March and now in November when we're recording this? Or did it just wrap up, or was it 5 weeks and they extended it to 12 and that's still ongoing? So I would probably put like a start month and an end month on here as far as the experience goes. It's great to show that you've got an internship position. I think that that's fantastic. Learn TypeScript. This is great. Watch your capitalizations. So JavaScript has a capital S. Over here, TypeScript also has a capital S, but over here, your TypeScript does not have a capital S. So you got to be consistent about that kind of stuff. Because again, as a hiring manager, I want to know that as a programmer, you've got that attention to detail that, you know to go in and like name things properly. Otherwise, you're like, why doesn't this variable work? And it's because you didn't capitalize a letter that you thought you should have, or vice versa. And it starts as simple as like little things like this on a resume. So just go through and make sure that you've got those kinds of things on here. Excuse me. So learn TypeScript to work in a strictly typed code environment. Okay. Developed a React app for an internal fulfillment application for processing company orders to pair and ship devices using Redux. So my general advice is a bullet point should never wrap around to a second line. Bullet points got their name from being short and impactful, and they do not have to be grammatically correct. So text like this is too long. As a human, when we see bullet point lists, we only pick up the first 5 or 6 words, especially when we're just scanning the page. And so you developed a React app for an internal company orders to pair and ship, research and define project architecture, future company React projects. Like, these are the words that I'm picking up as I'm scanning down this. So I would probably shorten these. You do want to keep the really strong action verbs like I developed, I learned, I researched kind of thing. And as much as possible, try to quantify what you've done. So you developed a React app. to do like orders for pairing and shipping. So you could say developed internal React app for e-commerce fulfillment or something like that. If it was actually e-commerce, it sounds like it was if you're processing orders to, to pair and ship devices. I would say developed a React/Redux app for e-commerce fulfillment, and just leave it at that. You don't have to use this many words. So try to shorten those up. And then I think as you shorten up those bullet points, again, you're going to have a little bit less content here on the right side. And so what might be helpful then is to move the skills in your projects maybe over here. So that could be another way of sort of reorganizing the content here, is like put your skills block right here at the very top, and then put your projects under that, and then your work experience. And I think if you can condense the work experience a tiny bit, that can help you out. Now, from that perspective, work experience will generally be a stronger selling point than project work. So you do need to kind of figure out how you want to balance that, because you've got 5 years of web development using WordPress, and you've got an internship, like a 3-month internship here. Like all of it in the tech industry. This is all very relevant experience. Same with the web developer, designer kind of work. This is all relevant work experience. So this kind of starts to trump your projects here a little bit. I think you don't need to list as many projects. And I think in your case, starting with the skills block up here and then immediately going into your experience, you could probably move your education over here to the left side and maybe list the projects down here at the bottom of this column. But I think this is still a lot of words, and I would probably reduce the number of words that you're explaining in all of this. So yeah, I would find ways of like reducing the text in here, and probably I would move like these bullets in a little bit. I know it does line up all of this stuff really well, but having the bullet like left of where the text actually starts does look a little odd. So that might be something to consider. Also, the date could be like over here on the right column, next to the title. You could actually put it out here in the right column. Again, it'll just free up that vertical space that you're otherwise taking up. I like that you mentioned here, I was remote for 5 years. So I was able to do all this stuff for an external agency on a remote basis for an extended period of time. This kind of skill is going to really, really shine on your resume. The fact that you can work remote and you did it successfully for a long period of time, that shows that they're going to be able to trust you to continue working remotely. You don't mention whether this internship was remote or not. So it might be something to consider here as well. If it was remote or if it was hybrid or something like that, you may want to specify on there as well. And then again, I think you could probably reduce some of the stuff here. Now, I like that you're quantifying. You maintain 100 small business WordPress sites, but you're using WordPress all over the place. Like this bullet point has WordPress, this one has WordPress, this one has WordPress. Built MailChimp. I think MailChimp is a capital C. SendGrid is a capital G, and I know that because I work there. Mailgun, I think was a lowercase g. But again, just double check that kind of stuff. Let's see. Yeah, solved email trouble for all in-house and client email addresses. So like some of this stuff is really good, but you also can kind of trim out bullet points that aren't going to be relevant for whatever job you're going to be going to. So if you're applying for a software development job and they do a lot of like email marketing, email campaigns and things like that, leave these bullet points on here about all the email stuff that you did. But if the company's like, yeah, you're just, you're going to be working on websites, but we don't do email at all, then take these bullet points off. I mean, it's neat to know, but it's not need to know. Like, I don't need to know that you've done that. It's fascinating that you have, but I think you could reduce the amount of content on the page by removing the bullet points that aren't going to be as relevant to a company to which you're applying using this resume. Now, if you're coming up with just a generic resume to put on, attached to your LinkedIn profile or to put on a portfolio site, and by all means, keep the stuff on here that you're proud of and that you want to share. But otherwise, I think that you generally want to try to trim out the stuff off the resume that's not going to be relevant to the company. You want to make sure that they're only seeing the stuff that's important to them. If you put other stuff on there, then they're going to be, looking through a lot of content to try to figure out, what's important or not. From chat, Carmen says, should a person have multiple resumes catering to specific jobs? For example, if it was a back-end position someone's applying for, should there be more focus on back-end project, less on front-end? Yeah, and that's exactly what I talk about. So if you go to the YouTube channel, I've got a whole video on there of how to make your first resume for the tech industry, or how to make a resume for your first job in the tech industry, something along those lines. And what I talk about is making a really long resume where you list every project, every job, every bullet point about everything you've ever done, list every skill. And then when you want to go apply for a job, you make a copy of that document and you trim out all the unnecessary stuff. So if you're applying for a back-end role, do you take all the front-end stuff off completely? I mean, it's up to you. If it starts to look a little sparse by taking all the front-end stuff off, then I would leave some full stack stuff on there. But if you're applying for a front-end job, then yeah, absolutely. You want to show me the front-end projects that you've done, and the first bullet points that you're listing up here should be front-end specific tasks and things like that you did at your internship. And, the first couple of things, for the WordPress job should be like the front-end stuff that you focused on, like the UX design and the HTML and the CSS that you did, and the grid layouts, and whether you use Bootstrap and tools like that. Like those should be the first couple of bullet points, because as I'm scanning through, those are the things that I want to see if you're applying for a front-end developer role. And you would also change your title then to say like front-end developer. Again, if it's a front-end developer job, you want to call yourself what they're hiring for. It's not that you're misrepresenting yourself. You're like, I am full stack, but if you want me to be a front-end developer, I'm a front-end developer. I just happen to also know back-end stuff. So yeah, I think that's a great question, Carmen. You want to cater the resume to the job. And it starts by having a really big resume, and then you just trim it down to just sort of the important stuff. And I use important stuff in air quotes, because what's important to one company won't be important to another. And that comes from doing the research on the company and trying to figure out how you want to shape that resume for them. And so I would focus on that as part of the company research of how do I figure out what's important to them based on the job post, based on what I know, what I've learned about the company. If you've talked to anybody at the company, like what do you know? Like what have they told you? I've got a whole video on like doing company research that you can go look at as well. And then you can better formulate a resume for that kind of stuff. Now, listing the tools and things down here that you've used, according to this, your internship, you did React Redux. I like that you don't put JavaScript in here again, because React kind of implies JavaScript. You've got JavaScript over here, so the ATS is already going to pick up on that keyword. So again, you don't have to repeat the keyword over and over again. Now, a non-technical person looking at this going, okay, well, I don't see anywhere on this side that you actually used JavaScript, but you listed over here as a skill, because they may not understand that JavaScript is implied with React and Redux. And so depending on the size of the company, like if it's a very large company and the engineering team is a small portion of that, then chances are you're going to be maybe interacting with a non-technical HR person. And so in that case, you may want to list JavaScript in here as a technology that you used at that job, just because they may not have that correlation. So some things to think about there. And then with the WordPress stuff, yeah, just being really repetitive. Like we know you did WordPress stuff. Plus, it was in the title. Also, WordPress, I think, does have a capital P, but up here in your title, you don't have a capital P. So again, just the consistency thing on that. Just watch out for those things. Now, here you say remote for 5 years, but you're actually giving me a 7-year history by the date. And so that doesn't line up. And so again, as I'm scanning through, I'm like 5 years. This says 7 years. So you may want to qualify that a little bit, or does this need to be corrected? Should this be 7 years? Or if it was kind of like an on again, off again, then you might want to say like 2014 to 2017 and then 2018 to 2021 or something like that. Like you can give me like gaps in that date range just to show that it really was 5 years. Otherwise, this doesn't line up. And then it starts throwing suspicion on other things on your resume of like, okay, well, if that was off, is other stuff going to be off? Do I need to start questioning other things? So some stuff to keep in mind there. I would, under your contact information now, for the sake of anonymization, you may have removed your phone number, but you absolutely want your phone number on here. You've definitely got your email and all that kind of stuff on here. LinkedIn and GitHub, those are good to have. Make sure that those are actual links. I think that would be fine. And then, so yeah, I think same kind of advice would go here as well. How could we sort of trim this up and make these make this less wordy? Also, my SQL is capital QL. So again, just doing your research on what needs to be capitalized properly, I think would be good. As far as the education goes, I like that you're explaining what Epicodus it was as a code school. Obtain skills like C#.net. I don't know that I've ever seen it actually spelled out as DOTNET. I think you could just put like the dot and then net on there. Maintain work quality with a high-paced environment. Yep, that kind of point is going to be really important for like smaller businesses and startups. So if you're going to go apply at a startup, telling them like, yeah, I'm used to like fast-paced, immersive, like throw me in the deep end of the pool. I think that this kind of thing is absolutely okay to have on the resume. If it's a bigger company, it may not be as fast-paced, and it's up to you whether you want to keep it on there at that point. So again, you can trim stuff off the resume that doesn't have to be there. And then maybe you can go back from that 9-point font back to the 10-point font, because now you've got a little more room on the page to kind of play with that layout. Participated in the mentorship program as part of the lower and upper cohort. Yep. So you could take out the word the. So participated in mentorship program, and then replace as part of the and just say for. So participated in mentorship program for lower and upper cohort class. And now it's down to one line. It's not going to wrap around a second line. So again, it doesn't have to be grammatically correct. I think that you can play with that a little bit. All right, so you've got some online training in this Treehouse thing, and then your Bachelor's of Fine Arts and Graphic Design, Tennessee State University. It's fine. Cool. So yeah, I think if you could move some of the project work over here, or at least the skills block, I would move the skills block in place of the summary. Keep the experience on here, but I think you could, again, kind of trim down what's listed on here, and then put the projects underneath that at the bottom, and then move all of the education over here to replace what you've got as your strengths and your projects block. I would just move all that education over here on the left side. Again, that's just my own bias of what I look for in a resume. Now, I have heard from others, and I don't claim to know everything about applicant tracking systems, but I have heard from others that applicant tracking systems, when they see a 2-column format, they make a presumption that the left column is going to be the thin column and the right column is going to be the wider column, and therefore it puts more weight on the keywords found in the right column. So again, if you've got keywords over here in your skills block that you don't list over here, for example, test-driven development, if that doesn't show up over here on the right side, the applicant tracking system may not give it as much priority. And so again, that's another argument for getting the skills block over here to the right column. Now, as far as the projects go, you're kind of naming it Bootcamp Capstone Project. I would actually put in like a user statement here. Like, what does the user do? Like, what is this project for a human? I think that those are kind of nice to see for myself. I like to know that you can appreciate what goes into building software for other people, other humans. And so having a bit of a take on like, what do you know about the user? So even just saying like users can upload pictures to, compare, their dogs or something like that. Like, give me some kind of statement about what the user is going to use this software for. I think that shows a deeper level of empathy. So think of it like an elevator pitch. And the thing that I commonly use on the stream is like, if you're in an elevator and, some rich person shows up and you want to ask them for money to make your cool little project into a startup, you're not going to be like, oh, you won't believe it, I built this really cool React Redux app, with this really great like Postgres database. It's all scalable, and you should see the HTML I wrote. Like, it's going to blow your mind. And meanwhile, the doors open and they leave, and they're like, I have no idea what that project was about. But if you're like, hey, I made this app where users can go in and they can share their location and then find a central point to like get together and have lunch, that might actually come across to them as impressive. Like, oh wow, that sounds kind of cool, like social connection kind of thing. Like, here, take my money. And so by starting with a user sort of empathy statement on the project, I think could be helpful. But again, it depends on how much room you have left. on the page. So I think as you shorten this kind of stuff up and fix your font sizes, you'll have to kind of figure out like how much room have you got left for your projects. Maybe you do keep a multi-column thing down here at the bottom where each of the projects is its own little mini column at the bottom. Maybe you could do like 3 or 4 columns down here at the bottom. But again, it's going to kind of throw off the layout of the page a little bit. At the same time, you're a UX designer. So, I mean, you're going to know better than me about, visual appeal and things like that too. So, you could do more of like a magazine type of layout or newspaper type layout where you've got different sizes of columns and different numbers of columns and stuff like that. So I would say play with it a little bit. And then I would probably check a site like JobScan where you can get like a free scan of your resume. And so what you do is you paste the text of a job post and you upload a resume, and it tells you how well they think your resume matches that job post. And they do things like, they understand a lot about applicant tracking systems, and so they will try to give you some advice on the keywords and where they are on the page and how many times they're repeated on the page and things like that. So I would use a site like JobScan. I think is it jobscan.io? Use something like that to do like one final pass and say, does this resume look ready? Now, you only get like a couple of free scans before they make you start paying money, but they do have a thing where if you sign up, they have like a blog post that if you share and you send them a screenshot of you sharing that blog post, they give you like 5 more free scans. And so there is some incentive to like promote their site a little bit. Otherwise, it's a paid service. And I want to say it's like, so like $10 a month, $15 a month or something like that, or maybe more, where they give you like unlimited resume scans. Now I'm curious about that. Jobscan.co. Let's see, they have a resume builder. Go away. Dashboard, upload. So upload gets started, and then it'll kind of give you this rating of how well you match. Somewhere on here they have a pricing thing. So you get 2 weeks for free, and then if you pay for 3 months, it's $90. So it's $30 a month. But if you pay month to month, it's like $50 a month. So it depends on how long your job hunt is expected to be and what kind of investment you want to make. I imagine they probably get a lot of people signing up for 3 months, just because it is a little bit cheaper than paying month to month, and you get unlimited kind of usage of this stuff. Carmen looks like a referral link of some kind. Carmen, what's the referral link? Does this give you credit? Like, do you get free scans if people sign up through your account? I'm totally cool with that. If that's what it is, I'm totally all right with referral links and stuff like that. But yeah, I actually did just a quick scan just to see what this was all about, and it actually came up with some pretty interesting stuff, just about my own sort of resume and how well, like I was looking at a developer job at Twilio kind of thing, because I used to work at SendGrid. And it said that my scan was really, really low based on the keywords and stuff that I put on my resume. So it was just a real quick hacky kind of resume I put together, and I did just a quick comparison just to see what kind of stuff it would unlock for me. So, oh, cool. So if you use Carmen's link, you get 10 free scans, and if you send it to friends, then they also get 10 free scans from you. Could you send it to yourself as a friend and sign up with a different email address? That would be an interesting way of sort of getting unlimited or virtually unlimited. I've got like 20 email addresses I could use, so that would be 200 free scans. So that could be kind of lucrative. But yeah, I mean, definitely share that stuff and share that kind of knowledge. That's why we're here. We're all here to help each other out, right? All right, cool. Yeah, just be cool about it for sure. Yeah, like don't spam people with it. That's obnoxious. Cool. So those are my thoughts about the resume overall. Generally, the layout is pretty good. A lot of words over here on the right side. I would probably trim some of that up. Make sure your font sizes are kind of consistent across the page. Cool. So hopefully Steve Stevenson kind of checks that out and finds that helpful. Cool. Let's go back over to chat mode. There we are. Now suddenly I have a gigantic head on my screen. Cool. Let's see. Armitage, thanks for the follow, by the way. Sorry I missed that earlier on. I was in the throes of resume review, but I appreciate the follows. Cool. All right. Well, let's dive into some more Q&A, shall we? And if you've got some questions too, like if you've got kind of burning questions that you want to discuss, I'm happy to kind of take those and do that kind of as part of the live stream. I do have a handful of questions that were submitted by some students, and so I'm going to go through some of those, and then we'll kind of wrap up from there. Like I said, I got to get to bed early because I got this crazy tech conference that I signed up for and paid money for, that I got to wake up at like 4 a.m. and then I got to go to physical therapy, and then I got to come back and do some work, and then RubyConf. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. Are cover letters still a thing? Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of cover letters myself. I think taking the time to write a cover letter shows that you are willing to go above and beyond. I think it's especially helpful for entry-level roles. Is it 100% necessary? I would say if they give you the option to upload a cover letter, then yes, you should do it. If there's no space to do a cover letter, like to upload a cover letter, then hey, free pass. You don't have to worry about it. But I think that if they give you the opportunity to, I think it's a worthwhile investment of your time. I think it allows you to show things about your personality and things about your background and your character and why you think you're a good fit for the job that otherwise wouldn't go on the resume, where you can talk about like how your past experience lines up with what the company's doing, or the kinds of projects that you're super passionate about and you happen to know that the company also works on those kinds of projects. I think being able to explain those kinds of things in a cover letter will really help win them over and go, oh yeah, we need to get this person on the phone. So I think it can't hurt. Now, whether you have the time to, I think you can also, like as you write a couple of cover letters, I think you could definitely start to see a pattern. And I typically follow a 3 paragraph pattern where the first paragraph is like introducing yourself, talking about the role that you're applying for. The second paragraph is the skills that you have that they were looking for in their job post and sort of showing how you're, actively learning and continuing to grow. And then the third paragraph, just to reiterate how you're headed in the same direction as they are and that you want a phone call. And I've got a whole YouTube video on that too. So I've been working on all that content over the summer and the fall, especially while my arm was in a sling with my shoulder surgery. I had a lot of opportunity just to record and kind of brain dump these thoughts. And I do want to go back and actually revamp some of the content on the website as well, because some of the stuff on Tech Interview Guide, the actual website is a little bit out of date. But I'm actually working on the daily email series now. That's my goal for November, is to get all that stuff rewritten by the end of the month, so that starting in December, we're going to have 4 mailing lists instead of 1 that you can sign up for. One's going to be technical questions, one's behavioral questions. Right now, the current daily email series is a mix of both. And so you can definitely, you can check out techinterview.guide and look for a link on the side that says daily email series. There's a place to sign up. And it's 6 weeks long. And as soon as it's done, it kind of scrubs your information out of the database. But come December, I'm going to have 4 lists where I'm kind of separating the technical behavior questions into 2 different lists. And then I've got another list, which is just general sort of questions about the interview process and the application process and company research and stuff like that. And then another one just on the preparation, like how do you get ready? How do you actually do the company research? Kind of so one is like the general process of like, how do you apply? What do you prepare to do the interviews? How do you ask for feedback? And then the other one is just like general preparation, like the company research and network and outreach and stuff like that. So I split that into 2 different lists. So I went from about 40 messages to like 120. So I've literally tripled the content. And it's going to be a lot of content. So I'm basically going through and I'm rewriting a lot of that right now. And I've done verbal transcription of what I want to say. Now I just got to clean it up into actual like paragraphs and stuff like that. And then have an editor go through and make sure it looks good and do all my grammar checking and stuff like that, because I can be bad at grammar sometimes. Cool. Hitokiri asks, do I know of an API available to see business ratings? Business ratings, like, that's a bit ambiguous as far as like what you mean by a business rating. So if you have more context, I'd love to hear it. There are there are things that you can access around like company ratings from sites like Glassdoor. Now, whether they have an API, I don't know. But you can certainly check if Glassdoor has an API. But I find people that post on Glassdoor are either incentivized by their employer to write amazing reviews, or they are disgruntled employees who left the company because they hated it there. And so in my experience, the reviews on Glassdoor are very polarized, opposite extremes. There aren't very many middle ground kinds of reviews on Glassdoor. There's a company called Crunchbase that I like. Crunchbase does a lot of research into like companies and growth of companies and acquisitions and things like that. And you can also see like when they got rounds of funding. So if that kind of thing is important, like I only want to apply to a company if they've had a round of funding in the last 3 or 4 months, you can use a site like Crunchbase to find that out. And they do allow limited free access to some of the stuff in their database. Hitakiri says, more so looking at Standard and Poor's or Moody's types of ratings, I guess business credit ratings. Oh, business credit ratings. You're thinking like Better Business Bureau and stuff like that. I don't know offhand of those kinds of APIs. They may exist. I've never used anything like that, but it would be an interesting tool to build as far as like a job preparation kind of thing to like go and scrape that kind of data. I think it would be really interesting to build. I think I've had ideas in the past of what if we could build a tool that scraped job sites and then figured out based on scraping your GitHub profile and your LinkedIn profile, which jobs it thinks that you're qualified to go apply to, you know, with some amount of threshold. Like if you have 30 to 40% of the skills, it's going to like, you know, bump that up. And if you have 80% of the skills, it's going to like put that right at the very top kind of thing, where it could just go scrape all these job posts and then look through your GitHub repos and kind of the code breakdown on your GitHub repos that you have authored, not that you've forked, but things that you've actually contributed to. And then look through your LinkedIn to look at the skills and things like that that you list on LinkedIn and maybe that other people have endorsed you for, and like use that as some combination of skill against the jobs that you're scraping to try to find relevance and go, here's a job that you might not have otherwise seen, but you happen to have the skills. That could be an interesting sort of take on that too. And then if you can tie in all these other sort of business APIs, you know, it'd be an interesting way around that too. Carmen says, well, what if the repos you work on are private? Yeah, that's definitely a consideration. If you authenticate to the GitHub API though, and this is just an app that you're running locally, I'm not saying like put this out in the cloud, you know, to have full access for everybody to use, but you know, if someone were to write this in a way that it was just private, you run it on your own machine, then I don't think there's really any danger to like going through and examining those repos. It would save you time, and GitHub APIs are actually really easy to utilize. A lot of libraries written to automatically go through and scan that kind of information from repos. Might be worth looking into at the very least. How does that work when you're on the job hunt? Looks like you haven't contributed in a long time. So if you have private repos, you can actually go into GitHub and you can say, I want to include the private repos in my graph. But they won't actually show up on the actual contributions. So if I go back over to this presentation mode, and let's go look at my GitHub, you'll get to see all my private repos here. But there is a setting, and basically, and I've got this little plugin that makes it a cool 3D graph just because I'm a nerd like that. But what we can see here is, you know, we can see that they contributed to these other repositories. Some of them, though, are going to be private. Like my interview emails, that one's private. So I can see that I've contributed to that, but other people looking at my profile would just see that I've contributed to a private repo. And so they'll still see the blocks, and they'll see the blocks building up over here, but they won't actually see like, oh, you contributed to this open source project. Or in this case, they would see that it was open source, but this one that is private, they wouldn't actually see the name. It would just say like Ian committed one time to a private repository or something like that. So there is a setting that you can enable that will make all those things show up. But you do raise an interesting point. There are companies out there that run their own Git sort of repository servers, or maybe they don't use GitHub at all. Maybe they use Bitbucket or some other site completely. And yeah, it looks like a barren wasteland on your side. It looks like you haven't done anything at all. there are workarounds that you could do there. Like every commit that you make on the job, you could make a, just a dummy commit to some other repo that does get pushed up to GitHub, and so it'll like kind of correlate those things. But it's a lot of overhead just to show that kind of stuff. I think a lot of companies aren't going to care too much about it, especially if it's like on the job experience, because your work experience is going to sort of outweigh what they would see on GitHub anyway. And you could always say like, when you're on the phone, like, hey, I know my GitHub looks pretty sparse. It's because I'm contributing to repos that aren't on GitHub. And so it looks like I haven't been coding, but I've actually contributed quite a lot. And if you can like screen capture, what you do in those repos, like as far as like a contribution graph, don't screenshot like the names of the repos or anything. But if they have something similar to this graphic design, you could certainly send that across and say like, I really am contributing to other code. It's just not on GitHub. So there are workarounds on that. So this is my GitHub. It is kind of fancy. I do the whole README thing that other people do. I do like a little Pythonic kind of thing here of like my pronouns, the coding languages that I prefer, the tools that I prefer, the coaching that I do, and been at it since. And then, the things that I'm happiest about contributing to. And then just code stats. These are just little plugins that I found from other people. And then my pinned repos. These are repos that I really want other people to see. And I'm probably going to go through and change some of these out because some of the stuff really doesn't matter as much anymore. But yeah, that's me. There's Riker as a puppy. Back when he fit on my lap. He doesn't fit on my lap now. He's gigantic. Cool. Just having a look through chat, see if there's anything else going on there. I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, I mean, if you could build a tool that like looked through your repos, because like if we look through the repos here and look at pod shorts, for example, we see the language breakdown here, like it's 63% Ruby, 17% HTML. If I come back a page, we can also see from here, like this one's primarily Ruby, this one's HTML, this one's Python, this one's Python, this one's HTML, this one's SCSS. It was a Ruby app that I didn't get around to writing, or a Rails app. But like you could come through and you could collect those kinds of stats and then say, okay, well, based on these repos that you've made, with the breakdown of languages that that you've been able to contribute to, here are some jobs that you could apply to, based on like scraping like Indeed and LinkedIn and monster.com or like whatever site you want to like try to scrape that data out of. And some of them will have APIs that you could access as well, but you may have to write your own web scraper to actually go through and like load the pages and stuff. But writing a web scraper, a spider, take you maybe a day. It's not the easiest thing to do because sometimes they'll block you if they start detecting that you're scraping their data. But it is a very fun project to get involved in for sure. Cool. If you do have other questions, definitely keep dropping those in chat. Otherwise, I think I'll hop over to do a little Q&A for, let's do like 10, 15 minutes or so. And then we'll go from there. I'm thinking about doing some kind of giveaway. I want to like 3D print something fun and do like a giveaway, and like ship it out to someone on the stream at some point. Maybe I'll do that like towards the end of the month. I'll figure out like, I'll make like a cool 3D printed design. So one of the, so the toy I have on the wall right here that you see this bright light is basically a little unit that mixes a whole bunch of filament together. Normally when we print something with a 3D printer, it all comes out as one solid color like this. And but with that thing, it'll actually print multiple colors at the same time. And then we can get into cool little multicolor 3D prints. And it's just Omnom from Cut the Rope. And his eyes and teeth are actually a glow-in-the-dark filament. So they actually glow green in the dark, which is fun and creepy to see these eyeballs and teeth staring at you from across the room. But yeah, maybe I'll try and come up with like a multicolor 3D print and I'll do like a giveaway or something. I do have this enormous dragon up here that I could probably do as a giveaway. I love just 3D printing stuff and giving it away to folks. So. Hitokiri, I'm still struggling with this current side project. Just feels like I could be more organized in my approach. It's a feeling now because I'm not exactly sure how to go about it. So trying to balance a side project when you're job hunting or when you're trying to work is definitely tricky. Just downloaded a mind map app, so that might be a fun way to organize it. Yeah. I have seen a lot of those apps. I have a hard time getting into those apps myself just because my brain is so full of things. I don't know how to like tie it all together. Um, I think that's why I like document-driven development and test-driven development kind of pairing up. And that was the project that I was working on Saturday and Sunday. I basically wrote a README of like, this is what I want to go build. And then I used that to organize the features so that I could then go write my tests and have the tests dictate for me, okay, this is how to actually go build the project. And that just helps me stay really focused, because if I just get in and start coding, what I find is I'll start coding and then partway through a feature, I'm like, oh, I should also add this thing. So I'm going to put this aside. I'm going to start working on this other thing before I forget. And then I get like halfway through that and I'm like, oh, I could also do this other thing. Let me put that one on the side and go do this. Meanwhile, I've got like 10 unfinished features. And so by doing document-driven design coupled with test-driven design or test-driven development, it allows me to stay much more focused on the project to make sure I'm actually going to get stuff done. And it's just something I've learned about myself. That's how I like to organize my own work. Everybody's different, though. I do know people that use these mind map things and use them so much that they can't not use them. And I think that's great. Like, however you find a way to stay organized for yourself, do that. That's going to be a really important sort of way to build up that discipline. Because when you're on the job, you need to have that same discipline of, this is how I'm going to methodically get through my work and kind of minimize my distractions and things like that. You want to be really careful about that sort of stuff. Just trying to find any option that works right now, because I have none. Yeah, I mean, try a thing and, you know, take kind of that agile sort of approach where you try a thing, you get some feedback, you implement a change, then you try a thing, you get some feedback, try a change. And it's just this circular sort of feedback loop of, I'm going to try something. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's fine too. I'm just going to iterate on it and learn from that process, and then figure out how you're going to apply what you've learned and go from there. All right, let's dive in on a couple of questions. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Let me paste this into the chat over here, or at least paste it onto the screen. So what's a good way to handle an interview question that you don't fully know how to answer? This can go one of two ways. One is they've asked you a technical question that you don't know the answer, or you only have like a surface level understanding. And another one is like a behavior question where you don't have an example to speak to. Do I do one-on-one coaching? I do one-on-one coaching. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the an interview question where you only have like a little bit of technical knowledge, or like completely unsure of like the technical answer, it's always important to start that answer with, I don't know. Like, tell me early on that you don't know. I mean, you don't have to say, I don't know. There are more diplomatic, sort of friendly ways of saying that you don't have information on something. But I think it's important to start the conversation with like, I haven't learned that. My curiosity hasn't taken me there yet. Or I've only learned a little bit about that, and here's what I do know. I think it's important to start the answer that way, as opposed to just like beating around the bush and then telling me 2 minutes later that you don't know. It's like, yeah, I knew that about 5 seconds into your answer. And so as an interviewer, my hope is that you're not going to waste my time. And I think it's important to recognize and have enough awareness about what you know and what you don't know. And again, remember, as an interviewer, my job is just to find those limits of your knowledge. What do you know? What don't you know? And now does that fill the gap that I have on my team? So you don't have to know all the things, especially as an entry-level dev. You don't have to know all the things. You don't have to be amazing at anything. We know that there's so much out there that you need to learn. There's tons of skills that you have not yet learned, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But my job as the interviewer is to find out what you do know and what you don't know. And so if I ask you, tell me everything about the HTTP lifecycle for requests and responses, you can start by saying, okay, I know, like at a very high level, the client is going to send a packet of information to the server sends back a response, and then that kind of continues back and forth. And every time I need a new resource, I got to go back to the server to request it and get that back with HTTP 1.1. With HTTP 2, it'll hold that communication open, and it'll let me grab multiple things before it closes the connection. And HTTP 3 is or Web 3, I guess they're calling it. That's going to be like a whole different can of worms that I'm still learning about myself. But whether you go into the depth of, okay, well, The first thing the browser has to do is find the IP address of the server. And so it's going to go translate the domain name into an IP address using DNS. And to do that, it's going to connect on port 53, to like a whois lookup on the domain. And, but first it's going to ask your ISP, like, hey, do you know this? And then the ISP is going to like kick it out to a DNS search. And then it's going to go through a whole bunch of databases to try to find the IP address. And then it's going to come back to you. And then you go connect to that IP address. And now you're actually saying, hey, I'm trying to reach google.com for this information. Do you have that information? And then deal with the response back and forth that way. Well, if you don't know anything about DNS, that's fine. You can just say, I know there's a DNS process to give me the address to connect to, but I don't know enough about how that works. That's fine. That's all you have to say. Now, if I'm specifically asking you, can you explain to me how DNS works? If you don't know, that's okay too. Again, you don't have to know all the things. You don't have to have an answer to everything that we ask you in an interview. The more answers you have, the better, but you don't have to know all the things. And I think that that's an important distinction that not enough people cover. I think a lot of interview prep material that you read and a lot of books out there, they're like, you must know all the things in order to go get that job. It's like, no, you really don't. You need to focus on what you want to learn and where you want to take your career and then go interview for that. And if that's not okay for them, then that's the business decision for them that they needed additional information that you didn't have. And that's okay too. When it comes to the behavior questions, this one can be a lot trickier for entry-level devs. And one of the people that I've been doing one-on-one coaching with on interviewing.io is facing this, where he hasn't actually worked professionally. And so he's really worried about doing behavior questions. Tell me about a time when you had to work, with someone and communication didn't work out. He's worked on like one group project ever. And he's never worked as part of a team in a professional setting. The little bit of professional experience he does have, he was an intern where he was working solo on something. And so he doesn't have a lot of context to answer these questions, and that's okay too. You can answer behavior questions where you don't have a good story. You can start by saying, okay, well, I'm going to have to draw on something that's not tech related because I don't have any relevant tech experience to draw on to answer that question. And what I coached him was, and he's like, well, what if they ask like a whole bunch of those questions? It's like, well, you only have to tell them once or twice that you don't have group experience in the tech industry to be able to answer those kinds of questions. If they keep asking you that, then they're a bad interviewer because they should be like, all right, well, I can't ask you these other questions because they all relate to being in a group setting and collaborative setting within the tech industry. And you've already told me a couple of times that you don't have that experience. So as an interviewer, I need to change my tactic and say, okay, well, was there a time in school, in college, university, in your code school, or in high school, if you're young enough, like, is there some kind of environment where you had to work together with other people, like a sports team? Like, go back through your whole life history if you need to. And it's okay to take a minute to think about like, okay, let me think on that for a minute. I want to make sure that I get a good example to share with you. So I'm going to have to like try to think through my history because I don't have that experience in the tech industry. I want to come up with a relevant kind of answer for you. And it's okay to take 20, 30 seconds to think through like, okay, well, there was that one time I was on a soccer team. Now we all got along really well though, so that communication wasn't really a thing. Oh, but I was on that hockey team one time. Yeah, we had a really hard time working together on the hockey team. All right, cool. I thought about it. Let me tell you about a time I was on a hockey team. And like, now you can kind of relay that story. Now you don't have to like murmur out loud like I just did. I'm just kind of vocalizing what might be going through a person's brain. And so whatever sort of scenario works for you, and if you legitimately don't have any scenario in your life experience, in your work experience, even your non-tech work experience that covers what it is they're asking about, and just say, you know what, I've thought through like some different jobs and different roles that I've had. I can't really think of a good example when that happened. Do you want me to try to hypothesize, like if I were in that kind of situation, do you want me to explain what I might do or what might be going through my mind or how I might approach a problem or, things like that? And they might say like, yeah, just walk me through that, or like, no, it's cool. We'll just move on to another question. And hopefully, again, as an interviewer, they're keeping track of like, okay, I asked this question. They didn't have any answer at all. I asked this question. They had a somewhat relevant answer. And so this next question is just like that first one. So I can't really ask that one because they're still not going to have a good example. And so as an interviewer, I need to be keeping track of this stuff so that I'm asking you questions that you can answer, because I don't want you to be in an interview where you feel like you can't answer any of my questions. That's not a great interview experience at all. And so I think that it's important as an interviewer to be able to keep track of that kind of stuff. As far as the one-on-one coaching goes, I do one-on-one coaching through interviewing.io, and it is a paid platform. So they will defer payments up front, but you can basically, you can sign up for free, or I can give you a referral code. If you do interviewing-io, if it works. Yeah, there's my referral code. So you can sign up through that referral code, and then you can connect with the support team and say, I want to do like a 3-session coaching thing with Ian. So I do 3-session and 5-session coaching sessions with them. And again, they are paid, and they are a little on the spendy side. I don't get all of that money. They do keep a portion of that money. But I do all that mostly for tax reasons. So I don't have to like I'm doing contracting work for them as an interviewer. I don't want to also have to like spin up a whole like coaching business and get a business license and whatever, because I've already got all that for doing the consultancy stuff that I do. And so I'd rather just keep all that payment stuff under one roof, so to speak. But they will defer payments. So if you can't afford the coaching thing, they will defer the payment for a little while until you get a job. So if you do want to do one-on-one coaching, you can contact the support team after you sign up. You can see the dedicated coaching stuff once you sign in and see the dashboard. And then from there, you'll be able to contact the support team and say, I'm specifically requesting Ian Douglas, and they'll know how to connect me from there. So if you want one-on-one coaching, that's how you can reach out to me on that. Cool. Carmen's got a question in chat. When and how do you name drop? For example, a job that you're interviewing for, your friend works there, or at a conference, your friend knows a speaker. It seems awkward. It does, but this is why we network. I mean, this is the entire reason that LinkedIn was created, was specifically to network and say, I don't know someone at that company, but I know somebody that knows somebody at that company. So, if I'm working, or let's say Carmen wants to go work at SendGrid, she knows I used to work at SendGrid. So Carmen could reach out to me and say, hey, Ian, can you introduce me to somebody at SendGrid? Yeah, I can introduce you to like 30 people at SendGrid. Who do you like? What kind of role are you looking for? And I'm happy to make those introductions for folks. Just connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to do that. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I will make introductions for you if you want. And actually did some coaching with someone Friday afternoon that was interested in getting some introductions. So I sent them a list and said, here's a list of people that I could introduce you to. Have a look through their profiles and let me know who you want to introduce, or who you want an introduction for. And they came back and said, yeah, these 5 people would be fantastic. So over the course of the next few days, I'm going to be like crafting little introduction things and get their approval and say, does this look good? If it does, I'm going to go ahead and send that as an introduction. So I'm happy to make introductions. It does feel awkward to say like, oh yeah, I'm a colleague of Ian's. That's fine. That's all you need to say. I mean, in a cover letter, if you know someone at the company, like let's say I know someone at Carmen's, or I know Carmen, and let's say I want to apply for a job where Carmen works, I'm going to put Carmen's name in the cover letter and say, I was speaking with Carmen about the role for blah, blah, blah. And I'm really intrigued. Like, I'm really excited about what your company is doing. That's my first paragraph. Now, as soon as they read that, they're like, oh, you know someone at the company, and through that conversation, you've applied for a job. They may go get a hold of Carmen and say, hey, Carmen, do you know this Ian person? They claim to know you, and they're really, jazzed about this job. And Carmen's like, yeah, like, if you can get them to kind of hype you up and go, yeah, I've interacted with them. We've done some networking. We've had some conversation. They seem like a good developer. They'd be worth a phone call. Or, oh yeah, that person's like my best friend, and I would love to have them work here. The HR team's like, great, let's get them on the phone. Like, anything they can do to make their life easier to find candidates for roles, they're going to do. And so any kind of opportunity they have to sort of shortcut that process, they're going to jump at the chance. And that's also typically why companies have referral programs. Like, if you refer someone to this job, we're going to give you a couple $100, because that whole referral thing shortens the overall hiring process they need to go through sometimes. Depending on what they're hiring for and who everybody knows. It can really shorten their hiring process. And so they're willing to pay for that. They would, they'd rather keep that money sort of in-house and keep their employees happy than go pay a recruiter to go source people like that. We call it sourcing, where I would pay a recruiter to go find me 10 candidates for a particular role. I'd rather get 10 referrals from other employees. If the employees are happy working there, they're going to refer their friends. And I would rather do that as a business. So as far as the when and how, you can do that in the cover letter. You can do it in your first phone conversation with them and say like, oh yeah, I was talking to, Dan Moore, who, we just had on the stream a couple of weeks ago. And Dan was telling me this or that about your company, and I'm like really excited to hear about it. So, what can you tell me? And, start that whole conversation. They're like, okay, cool. They know Dan, and we know Dan. We love Dan. And Dan is awesome, by the way. Go get to know Dan. So yeah, name drop as much as you can. And if you know multiple people there, you don't have to list everybody you know. Like find maybe the people that have worked there the longest and say, I've been speaking with so-and-so and so-and-so who've been at the company for a really long time, and they're still there. They love it that much. And I want to work for a company where I can bring that kind of, passion and drive and be at the company for a long time. So yeah, I think those are all kind of good things to sort of keep in mind as you're doing that introduction. But it would happen mostly during the introduction phase and phone screen and cover letter. That's probably where I would do it the most. Once it's beyond that, then, if you get into the technical interviews, if they ask like, how'd you hear about this job? You're like, oh, I'm old friends with Carmen. We've been chatting for months, and got to know Carmen, and we've been chit chatting, and they mentioned this job was opening up, and so I applied through Carmen. And they're like, okay, great, we like Carmen too. So and again, that can kind of bias them in your favor of like, all right, you're a friend of a friend, so let's bring you on the team. It can help a lot. Now, if you're like, oh yeah, I know Carmen, they're like, oh, we don't like Carmen. Then it can actually really backfire on you too. And so you do need to be a little bit careful about the reputation of the people that you're getting the referrals from. But, if you're sort of taking care of your network in that way, and you're interacting with good people, then, there's nothing really to worry about there. But it is a consideration for sure. Like, you want to make sure that you're networking and getting those job connections through people who are well respected in their companies. That you're not going through a referral that's gonna like end up not working out well for you. So yeah, thanks for the questions in chat. I think I'll do one more from the Q&A, and then we'll kind of wrap up for the night, I think. Kind of a common question. How do you answer the question about salary? I've kind of covered that in the past, so I don't know that I'll cover that one again for a little while. Yeah, here's a good one. And I generally talk about this no matter what your skill level is. What do you do if you don't know the tech stack that the job post is looking for, and maybe that they're asking you to do a technical assessment in? Again, as an interviewer, my job is to bring out the best of you in this process. And so if I specifically say, hey, we want to give you this take-home assignment, and I really want you to use this language and framework that I can tell from your resume you have zero experience in, then you can do that one of two ways. You can respond to that one of two ways. You can say, all right, cool. Because I don't know that technology, I can do this one of two ways, and I would like for you, the company, to tell me which way you would like me to go. I want to spend X number of hours doing this, and so I can show you how well I can go learn this technology and try to apply it towards the goal. Or I could build it in this technology that I do know to show you the strength of my depth of knowledge about a particular area. And then once on the job, we can talk about like how I'm going to transfer the skill from that over to this other tech stack. Or if you really want me to use that tech stack, I may not be able to complete it by the deadline that you want, but I will show you how I'm going to go learn. And I'm going to keep track of all the learning resources that I used, all the tutorials that I watched, to try to get something up and running, and kind of the process that I used, and whether that means you do a screen capture, like a little screen recording of like, okay, got to do this thing where I need to go find an array. So how do I make an array in Rust? I've never used Rust. So let me go do a Google search for how I do an array in Rust. Let me go apply that in my code, and now I'm going to remember that the next time I need an array, I've got that URL documented, but this is how I've applied it in my code. And hopefully as I work in that code a little bit, I don't have to keep referring back to that site over and over again, maybe glance at it once, and then I'm just going to kind of keep applying that work. And showing that process then is going to be really interesting for them to go, yeah, okay, we can throw anything at you. You're going to be really tenacious about it, that you're going to jump in and dive in, and you're going to be happy to go learn a thing, and you're going to be effective in how you learn that thing. And so you can take it one of two ways. You can say, I can show you what I can learn and how I learn, or I can do it in a tech stack that I do know really well and show you what I'm capable of. And I think any company would be happy to answer one way or the other how they would like you to proceed from there. So I think that would be a good approach when they specifically want you to work in a tech stack that you don't know. You could approach it that way. Now, some companies will say like, oh yeah, okay, our bad. You don't know Python and Flask, so you don't have to write it in Python and Flask. But if you know Node.js and Express and you want to do it in JavaScript, totally okay. We can still evaluate that. Just make sure it conforms to the same like sort of endpoints or functionality that we ask for. Show us your best work. Show us like what you would be super proud of. And I mean, honestly, companies should be flexible enough to let you do a project or a take-home assignment like that in whatever you're bringing your best self to do. So it really shouldn't matter the language or the framework. Now, if their job post is, we need you to know this skill, then it becomes a little trickier of like, well, I don't really have that skill, so I can kind of fumble my way through it. And I was listening to someone talk about fairly recently about someone had to do a take-home assignment, and the company said, hey, we want you to spend like no more than 6 to 8 hours on this thing. But it was a technology that they didn't know. And so they spent way more than 8 hours trying to implement everything. And they handed it in. They're like, here's my project. Well, now they've set up that expectation for that company that when they need them to do an amount of work, it's only going to take them 8 hours. It might have taken them 40 hours to do, but they've done it now. And by presenting it in that way, they've given the impression that this only took me 8 hours to do, not 40 hours to do. And so now the next time they're like, okay, great, you've got the job. Day one, go do that again. You're like, oh shoot, I've got an 8-hour workday. Tomorrow I've got another 8-hour workday. How am I going to get 40 hours of work done by tomorrow to show that I'm still capable of that 8 hours of effort? And now you're like, well, you know, that actually took me longer than 8 hours to build, and now it looks bad for you. So I would always caution, like if a company says, hey, we only want you to spend this amount of time on it, spend that amount of time on it. Hand it in. And when you hand it in, you can say, by the way, because I don't know this technology, this is as far as I got. But while I wait to hear from you, I'm going to continue to work on it. And I'm going to check back in with you every couple of days as I make, you know, some sort of milestone. I'm going to check back in, and I might send you another copy because I'm really interested in this job. I want to show you that I'm capable of learning this thing. So I'm just going to keep working at it. But here's what I got so far when you do hand it in. So now it's setting the expectation of this is what I was capable of in that time frame. But I really want this job, and so I'm going to keep working on this thing. I'm going to keep building this thing. And as long as you're doing that regular kind of communication with them, I think that will also really set you apart as a candidate, because you're going to show, hey, if you hire me, I'm going to constantly get you up to speed, especially if I'm remote. I'm going to constantly have good communication with you to show you this is what I'm doing, this is what I've done, this is what I know, this is how I'm applying this knowledge on a regular basis. And that's what I'm going to be like as an employee. Companies are going to love that. I coached a student from Turing quite a few years ago in a similar sort of thing. They were looking for a remote job. That remote job was in a completely different country on a completely different continent. And he's like, I don't know what to do. They gave me this take-home assignment to work on, and it's going to take a really long time to build. I'm like, okay, well, let's break it down in an agile kind of way, make yourself little tickets for it. And as you work on it, you're going to ping them, like work, during the daytime or whatever. And then when you're getting ready to go to bed, send them an email and say, this is what I accomplished for the day. By the time they wake up over in the UK, because they were in the UK at the time, when they wake up, they're going to see all those notes. They can give you feedback. So while you're writing that, you can say, by the way, I'm a little stuck on this. Is there anybody there that can kind of point me in the right direction for this? Otherwise, I'm just going to keep at it tomorrow. Now they've got a couple of hours where they can respond. And now you wake up in the morning and it's their afternoon, and you might have a little bit of overlap time. And now you take their notes and you continue to work your day and do that same thing the next night. Write up, this is the progress that I made. Thanks for sending over those notes. That was really helpful. This is what I accomplished because of that. And that whole feedback loop, like, really caught that company off guard. They're like, we have never had anybody do that before, and give us this constant stream of communication. And they hired him. They're like, I don't know how we're going to do the work visa thing to get you over here, but we absolutely want to hire you. And that was a big part of it. Like, yeah, he had the tech skill, but a lot of it was the communication of, let me talk you through what I'm doing on a regular basis and how I'm applying this. I'm showing you how I ask for help and how I'm applying that answer completely asynchronously. I mean, he ended up moving over there and like working directly in their office. And so that made the communication much easier. But for him to even get that job, just spending those cycles on the communication knocked their socks off. They're like, we love that. We've never had anybody do that before. And so I think any opportunity that you have to kind of over communicate to some degree with a company, I think is going to be a good step to make. Now, you want to be careful, like you're not emailing them like every hour on the hour, like write them one message a day kind of thing. Like, this is the progress that I've made and I'd love some feedback, or I'd love some input on this particular area. Is anybody available to kind of code review this little bit or something like that? I think a lot of companies are happy to kind of see that regular stream of communication from people, where we're so used to just, okay, cool, you gave me a thing to do, I'm just going to bunker down and go heads down, I'm going to get this thing done, and I'm going to come up for air when it's finished, and then try to explain, well, it took me this long because I ran into this problem and that problem. I would rather, like as a hiring manager, I would rather hear from you on a regular basis of, here's how I'm solving the problem as I go, and here's how I'm asking for feedback, and here's how I'm going to ask for questions, so I don't have to make assumptions that are maybe going to be bad assumptions. I would rather ask for input and plan my work based on a good assumption than to, make a bad assumption. Now I've taken the project in a completely wrong direction that you weren't expecting. And now I've either got to undo a bunch of work, or I've got to hand in something that you weren't expecting me to build. And now, because those expectations are off, I don't move forward in the process, or maybe not move forward in the process. So those are kind of my tips on communicating for that kind of thing if you get a take-home assignment. So whether it's in a technology or not, I think the communication aspect is going to be an important piece. And then again, if they really want you to build something in a tech stack you don't know, then you've got the choice of, do you want me to show you how I learn, or do you want me to show you how I can build this thing in technology I do know, just to show you my best work? And give them the choice. Put it back on them to choose for you. Don't make the choice yourself. Make them choose, and just say, I'd really like your input on, if you really want me to use that tech stack, I will. I'm not going to finish it in time because I've got to go learn it, but I'm going to write and document my process of how to do that. Alan's Charted Genes. Great name. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for the follow. First time chat. Is it really common for interviewers to give a developer a takeaway project from an interview? I do hiring in the system administration engineering area and hadn't heard of that. Here in America, it's becoming more popular to do like some sort of take-home assignment. Not everybody's good at coding on the spot, and some people just want a minute to think about it where someone's not like watching them code. And so over here in America, it's actually becoming a pretty popular thing where, as part of the application process, they might do a phone screen to say, okay, does Alan really know, like, can they talk the talk at least? Okay. Cool, we got through that interview. Let's give them the take-home assignment. And based on the quality of what you send back and when you send it back, like, was it on time? Was it good quality? Does the code look like, did they build what we asked them to build? Did they communicate about it? Did they document anything as part of that process? In order to know, like, do we move on to the next step? So when I worked at SendGrid, for example, this is exactly how I ran my interviews. This was back in like 2011, 2012, 2013 kind of time frame. What I would do is I would do a phone screen, and if that worked out well, I would say, okay, on Thursday, like, wait for an email. I'm going to email like a whole bunch of people a take-home assignment, and then you've got the weekend to do it. It's due Monday morning at 9, and then I would spend that next couple of days, like Monday, Tuesday, kind of evaluating the submissions that came in. And I would always tell them, like, this shouldn't take you more than 4 hours. If it takes you more than 4 hours, you're doing something wrong. And it was just a really simple, like, HTML-based script that was just doing some form validation. That's all it was. It wasn't anything very complex. And then I would evaluate that, and then the top candidates from those submissions, I would bring on site, and they would continue to work on that code. And again, this is a decade ago. People weren't doing this a decade ago. But to see that stress level drop when they came into the interview, because most people, when they do a take-home challenge and they submit it, it gets thrown in the bin, and nobody ever sees that code ever again. But when you come to my interview, darn right, you're going to be working on that code again. And so while I'm evaluating that code to decide, okay, I'm going to bring Alan in for an on-site interview, I'm going to be making notes on Alan did this well in the code. Alan could improve in this way. So when you come on site, I'm going to be like, all right, Alan, thanks for that submission. It was great. That's why we brought you on site. I found 2 bugs I want you to fix, and I want you to implement this new feature, and you get to choose what you do. But you've got an hour, go. And now you have to make a choice of, do I fix things that were wrong, or do I only build like new shiny things? And there's psychology in my mind about, do you only pick the new stuff, or are you willing to maintain old existing code that is broken? And if you try to do a bit of both, then that's great. If you only gravitate to one or the other, then that can send signals to me as the interviewer. But that kind of process is becoming more common within companies. And I think one piece of advice that I've been giving to Stream, where I work, is let's give the interview candidate the choice of, do you want to code live on site, or do you want a take-home assignment or a takeaway assignment, and let them choose, because some people will naturally gravitate to one or the other. Now there is risk in doing a take-home assignment that they are spending more time on it than you anticipated, and there is risk that they're copying and pasting code from some other source and is not actually code that they are writing. And so the problem that you're asking them to solve does need to be novel, and it needs to be something that they've never seen or anybody has seen. And whether you share that as like a private repo that you give them access to, so they're the only one that has access to it, and just tell them like, hey, make them sign a non-disclosure, like don't share this question because we use it for other people, or have like a whole bank of these little projects for folks to work on. But keep the time relatively short, and then give them the choice of like, you can code this on your own time and submit it if you've got that availability, or if you just want to code during like a live session with one of our engineers, we'll do that. And then from there, we'll move on to the actual on-site where you're going to continue to work on that code. And I think giving the candidate a choice, I think puts a little more flexibility on the candidate for what they want. And it also shows that as a company, you're willing to be flexible. You're willing to take their feelings and anxiety and all that into consideration. And I think it buys a lot of goodwill from a company interviewer sort of perspective. I would love to see more companies do that, where they offer the choice to the candidate and say, you can choose one of these 2 ways. Not everybody has the capacity to come up with multiple processes like this, though. So I think the sooner your company can start working on that kind of thing, the better it'll be down the road for your candidates, because it's showing that you care enough about what we call the candidate experience, that you are willing to consider them and their feelings, and not, that it's not just this big one-sided beast that it is right now, where I'm the company and I've got all the power and you just have to dance, monkey dance, kind of thing. And, they've got to jump through all the hoops and do all the thing. But if it's a collaborative thing of like, hey, this is what we want you to do, you get to choose how to do it. Now as a candidate, you're like, cool, if I get that autonomy even on the job, then this is going to be a great place to work, and they're going to be even more excited to come work for you. So yeah, you can have that one for free. And if you implement it and it works out well, then you owe me $1 million. Hypervisor, good to see you again. Hope you're doing well. I was up way too late finishing that 3D print last night, and then the 3D print failed on me. It was a complete disaster. It like totally cracked in half. It didn't adhere well on several layers as I tried to like take the support material off. The whole thing just shattered, which is really disappointing. So I get to start all over again. Yay. Good times. I love nerding out on 3D printing. Been a big fan of 3D printing now for going on 4 years. So. Hypervisor's got a question in chat. What do I think of PhD within embedded systems? So I started my career in embedded systems and working in low-level software. I just have a college diploma. I don't even have a bachelor's degree, much less a master's, much less a PhD. My understanding of like the master's and PhD programs is that you can get into some really interesting research. And so I would say, how do I feel about the PhD? It would depend on what your research was, and like what were you doing that's so new and novel that it's going to like revolutionize something about that industry. And that's honestly the hard thing about getting any PhD, is how do I come up with like a project idea that no one has ever thought of before. I think coming up with something novel is really hard, but it's not impossible. I think it's absolutely a possible thing to do. It would just be a question of what did you build? What kind of idea did you have? Or like whether it's a project or a thesis, what did you come up with that's going to drastically change things? In my experience as an interviewer, and there's been some research done as well, Getting a master's degree in computer science when you already have a bachelor's degree in computer science, getting a master's degree does not significantly help you on the job. And in fact, some companies will pass on you as a candidate because they think, well, you got a master's degree, you just want more money in compensation. And so they will pass on you just because you have a master's if you already have a bachelor's. If you have a bachelor's in some other discipline and then you get a master's in computer science, then they'll look at that and go, okay, well, cool, you got a master's, but because it was like only 2 years of computer science content where maybe your other discipline was, finance or business or something like that. Now they look at that sort of master's degree as more of like an associate's degree because you've only got 2 years of content that you've learned. Even though you're applying it towards a master's degree, it's not the same depth as if you had a computer science degree and then a master's degree where you're going like really super deep on something. In my experience, a lot of master's programs in computer science where your initial degree, your undergrad was not computer science, your master's degree program is really just covering like the first 2 years or so of the bachelor's computer science. Now, I could be completely wrong on that, but that's my understanding and sort of my experience with it. So as a hiring manager, if I look at your resume and I see you've got a bachelor's in computer science and a master's in computer science, like, all right, cool, you've done some extra stuff, but you're really like, that just tells me you want a bigger paycheck because you've got a master's degree. And in some cases, yes, you will have earned that additional pay. But as a small business, I'm less likely to hire somebody with a master's degree. If you've already got a bachelor's degree, I'm just going to hire somebody with a bachelor's degree. Or hopefully, if I'm a good business, I'm going to realize I really don't need even a bachelor's degree to do much of the work that we're actually doing on the job and hire somebody without a bachelor's degree, whether it's a code school or a college diploma or something like that. So when it comes to the idea of a PhD, again, that's taking it to this whole other level. And Hypervisor and I chatted last night while I was doing the live coding. We were kind of pausing and chatting about research projects and getting like pure R&D types of roles where it's like very academic research oriented. And those kinds of jobs are much more rare in our industry, in my experience. Like big companies are willing to put time and energy into like just pure research projects and sort of like skunk works and like proof of concept kinds of things. Smaller and mid-sized companies don't have the capacity for that. And so you'll find a harder time finding those jobs at smaller companies. And you're going to be competing with other people with PhDs to go get it, like those really big company jobs, whether it's a FANG company or just like a really big company that's willing to invest in research because that's what the company wants to do for like patents and so on. So it really depends on what you want to do for your career. So the fact that it's specific to embedded systems, I don't think would really matter one way or the other. But again, it depends on what you're doing for your PhD and how you're applying that as part of your job hunt. Hypervisor goes on to say, I'm not the fastest or most accurate programmer. I can come up with ideas. Ideas are cheap though. Like I've got a billion project ideas that I would love to get to. It's really about the execution. If you can't execute on it, then the ideas, it doesn't mean as much. Not to say your ideas aren't good, but it is about the execution. So if you've got ideas, like start applying them, start building those projects if you can. That's more impressive than just like, oh yeah, I got like tons and tons of ideas. Everybody you talk to's got an idea about something. Whether you've actually got the tools and the ability to execute on that is very different. Cool. Carmen, good to see you. You got to run. Have a great week. And let's chat some more this week about that call we had the other day. Have fun at RubyCon. If somehow Jonah is there, please tell him Alabaster Testing Call. Yeah, all right. Don't hug him for you? Okay, I won't hug him for you if I do get a chance to see him. I hope I get to see him. I told him that I owed him a very expensive bottle of something fun to drink because he was the one that really helped me get this stream going as far as like fixing a bunch of audio problems and stuff that I had. He spent hours with me trying to debug that, and most of it was just him like, okay, I'm talking now, can you hear me yet? And me like scrambling to try to get stuff working on a Mac. So yeah, Jonan is awesome. Go follow the Jonan Show, by the way. He's at the Jonan Show. Twitch.tv, the Jonan Show. He's also on Twitter with the same username. Yeah, Jonan's just an amazing person. He has Carmen and several other friends get together on a live stream from time to time. Not sure when he's going to get back to live streaming, but generally they do like every Wednesday or every other Wednesday. And yeah, just great human being. Go follow them and hang out with them, ask them questions too. He will totally understand if you say Carmen said not to hug you. All right. All right, cool. If I see him, I will say, Carmen said not to hug you. And I will like high five him or bump elbows or something instead. Most machine learning positions require a PhD. Again, it depends how deep you're getting into the math and stuff on that. I know a lot of machine learning stuff where you just have to have a degree or a background in math to where you can apply it. So it really depends on, whether you're coding the libraries and getting deep into the like the math and the training aspect of like how are you training the models and things like that. It's my understanding of it. I could be really wrong. I haven't spent a lot of time in machine learning. So cool. I think I'm going to wrap up there. Good to see you, Carmen. Have a great week. I am going to wrap up there because I got a really early morning tomorrow and I got a busy week ahead of me. But yeah, we'll see you on Thursday. Thursday, I haven't got any plans yet for the stream. I will be live streaming during the day. The live streaming that I'm going to be doing during the day is going to be work related though. I'm going to be working on some Go code where I'm going to be building an API in Go. And then I'll be using like snippets of that video to put together for something at work. And then once that's done, I'm then going to like keep coding on that to look at scaling that on AWS. And there's going to be a whole lot of learning involved there. And so I may be doing pair programming with other people from Stream and kind of getting their perspectives and how to get things up and running on AWS and so on. So that'll be during the day. But this tech interview guide, like the career advice and the questions and answers and live chat and stuff like that, Sunday and Thursday. Don't have a plan yet for Thursday. I will come up with one before Thursday, I'm sure. Next Sunday, though, I've got a panel of folks that are going to be on the show. And they were people that went to code school, learned all about software development for a really long time, and then went and got a job that was not full-time software development. And then some of them have then transitioned into development roles. And so we're going to talk to them about what their journey was, how they got into that kind of role, and how they found transitioning into a software role or whether they wanted to get into a software role or not. So it's going to be a really good conversation with a bunch of friends. That'll be next Sunday. Thursday, like I said, haven't got a plan yet. If you do want a resume review like I did earlier tonight for Steve Stevenson, you can check out the streaming link that I've pasted here in chat. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just go to techinterview.guide/streaming. And there's a form on there that you can submit a resume. Please anonymize your details on there. I don't want to dox anybody on the internet by showing your actual name and phone number and email address and things like that. But yeah, send me some anonymized resumes. I would love to actually get someone on the stream to help do kind of like a perspective thing. I'm like, this is what I like about the resume. What do you think? I've done that in the past, and those make for great fun. While we banter back and forth about whether, something like karate belongs on a resume. That's a little shout out to Jonan too. Because he thinks karate, if you have karate as a skill, that belongs on a resume. So I sent him a mock resume and I actually put Taekwondo on there, and he didn't even catch it. I don't think he noticed at all. But I would love to have someone on the stream just to give other perspective and show like, yeah, it's not just about my perspective. And my whole reason for doing this stream is like, yes, to share my thoughts and perspectives, but I don't want to be just another white dude with an opinion on the internet. I like to have people on the stream that can help share their perspectives as well. And my whole driver for doing this is to help make the community around me better. It's something that I strongly believe in. I believe that we should share what we know, and it makes us all better. So find somebody that you can share a piece of knowledge with this week, whether it's ridiculous trivia or something on a technical level. And I will leave you with my new favorite piece of trivia. My old favorite piece of trivia was that there's enough room between the Earth and the Moon to fit all the other planets of our solar system. The latest ridiculous piece of trivia that's absolutely of no use to anybody. Brazil is a really tall country. The northern point of Brazil is closer to Canada than the northern point of Brazil is from the southernmost point of Brazil. That's how tall Brazil is. The northern part of Brazil is closer to Canada than it is from the southern part of Brazil. Cool. There's your useless trivia for the week. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday, and have a good night.